There are deaths that end a life and deaths that crack open an entire era. Princess Diana's final night in Paris is one of those hinge moments, a short drive that turned into a global trauma, a crash that became a modern myth, and an absence that quietly rewired the British monarchy for a generation. The question people keep returning to isn't only how she died, but why it feels like the story never finished. As an investigative historian, you start by separating two things that are often blurred on purpose. 1. What is supported by evidence and legal findings? And 2. What is psychologically satisfying as a story, the kind that gives the tragedy a mastermind instead of a mess? Below are 5 major hypotheses that have circulated for years, with the most important examined in depth. None of this is about sensational blame for its own sake. It's about what the record most strongly supports and why the alternative narratives persist. Hypothesis 1, most supported: a chain of negligence, speed, alcohol, pressure, and no seatbelts. If you strip away every rumor, one hard truth remains: a lethal collision at high speed is brutally efficient. The French investigating magistrate's communiqué 1999 stated the crash was not a voluntary act and attributed it to the driver being drunk, affected by medication incompatible with alcohol, driving at high speed, and attempting to avoid a slower vehicle. Operation Paget, the Metropolitan Police inquiry into conspiracy allegations, described the same core conclusion in plain language: no conspiracy to murder, a tragic accident. And the coldest, simplest multiplier: seatbelts. Operation Paget notes that none of the occupants of the car was wearing a seatbelt. This is where reason becomes mechanism: a crash at roughly highway speed in a confined tunnel, a driver impaired, split-second decisions under pressure, bodies unrestrained in a violent impact. Operation Paget reports that Mercedes comparison crash tests estimated impact speed around 105 km per hour, 65 mph, 5%, and that investigators found no physical evidence contradicting that estimate. So who's to blame in this hypothesis? Not a single villain, a stack of human choices that lined up just once: an impaired driver at the wheel, an urgency to evade photographers, an unsafe speed for that roadway, and the fatal decision or habit not to buckle up. That's not cinematic. That's exactly why it's persuasive. Hypothesis 2, also crucial: the chase factor, paparazzi pursuit as an active cause, not just background noise. Here the story gets morally sharper. In 2008, a British jury returned a verdict of unlawful killing, not murder in the conspiracy sense, but death caused by gross negligence, attributing it to the reckless driving of the chauffeur and the pursuing paparazzi. This verdict matters because it reframes the paparazzi from scenery into a causal force. The pursuit didn't have to physically ram the Mercedes to shape decisions inside it. Panic and speed are enough. Operation Paget, while rejecting conspiracy, also documented how extensively investigators evaluated theories involving flashing lights and other interference because witnesses described chaos, bikes, cars, flashes. But the inquiry concludes those flash theories can be discounted as the cause. What this hypothesis explains well: why the driver already impaired would push speed beyond what the road could forgive, why a normal crash becomes a public morality tale about media culture, why the case refuses to die. The chase gives it a human antagonist, even if there's no secret plot. Hypothesis 3, important, evidence-based but often misused: the white Fiat Uno contact, an unknown car that changes the physics. This is the hypothesis conspiracy narratives love, because it contains a real blank space, an unidentified vehicle. Operation Paget's overview states: we believe there was a glancing contact between the Mercedes and a white Fiat Uno just before the Alma underpass. That's significant because a glancing contact at speed, combined with tunnel geometry, can be enough to destabilize a vehicle without any elaborate plan. 2 very different ways people interpret the same fact. 1. Mundane interpretation most consistent with the record: a brief contact and confusion in a fast-moving chase environment. 2. Conspiratorial interpretation: the unknown car is a ghost actor used to stage the crash. Operation Paget specifically set out to test the murder conspiracy allegation and concluded there was no conspiracy to murder. So the Fiat Uno detail is best read as one more real-world complication in a night already full of them, not proof of assassination. Hypothesis 4, an inside job, intelligence, royal plot, flash, sabotage, cover-up. This is the most famous category: claims that security services, the royal household, or the establishment engineered the crash. Operation Paget addressed these allegations directly, including claims involving the security and intelligence services. It states investigators had extensive access, examined records, and found allegations unfounded, and saw nothing justifying further inquiries with royal family members. On a specific spy thriller element, Blinding Flashes, the overview says investigators are confident such theories can be discounted as the cause of this crash. A court judgment summarizing the inquiry likewise notes the report's conclusion that there was no evidence of conspiracy, and no basis for allegations that the driver was an agent or that intelligence services tracked the car. Why this hypothesis persists anyway? Because it gives the public what tragedy usually denies: intent, a mastermind, and therefore a target for grief. But persistence isn't proof. In the documentary record, the inside job theory repeatedly runs into the same wall. Investigations do not find credible evidence that a murder conspiracy caused the crash. Hypothesis 5. Pregnancy or engagement motive. They had to stop her. This is a subset of the inside job narrative, that Diana was pregnant and were about to marry Dodi, and that this threatened the monarchy. Operation Paget's overview states investigators were certain she was not pregnant, strengthened by forensic tests, and that evidence from friends and associates indicated she was not engaged and not about to get engaged. This doesn't prove every rumor false, but it undercuts the motive structure that makes the assassination story feel logically necessary. So, what is the real reason? If you force the story to name one reason, you risk lying because the record points to something messier. Diana died because a high-speed escape attempt, driven by an impaired chauffeur, unfolded inside a media chase culture, and basic safety seatbelts failed at the worst possible second. Legally, the British inquest jury put the blame in the realm of gross negligence by the chauffeur and the pursuing vehicles. Investigatively, Operation Paget concluded no conspiracy to murder and treated the crash as a tragic accident. The French magistrate's communiqué framed it as a non-voluntary accident caused by drunkenness, medication, high speed, and road circumstances. That's not a single smoking gun. It's a locked door with 5 keys, and on that night, every key turned. Who is to blame? Most defensible answer: 1. The chauffeur's impairment and driving decisions as described by French authorities. 2. The pursuing paparazzi culture and immediate pursuit pressure as reflected in the inquest verdict's gross negligence framing. 3. The decision-making environment, evasive tactics, speed, route, and security choices. 4. The failure to wear seatbelts, a factor repeatedly emphasized in investigative materials and the inquest narrative factors. If you want a single sentence, the blame belongs to negligence amplified by spectacle. What if she had not died? The counterfactual that haunts the crown. History is cruel. Sometimes the what if matters because it reveals what the system couldn't survive. If Diana had lived, the monarchy would still have faced turmoil, but the tone of the next decades might have shifted in 3 major ways. 1. The monarchy's emotional contract with the public. Diana was not just famous, she was emotionally legible. If she'd continued her public life, the royal family might have faced sustained pressure to modernize faster, not by policy but by comparison. Why does she feel human, and they feel distant? 2. William and Harry's formation and the long shadow of legitimacy. A living Diana likely means different marriages, different media strategies, different fault lines. The heirs to the throne might have matured under a mother who understood the press as both weapon and wildfire, possibly altering how the next generation negotiated public duty. 3. Charles and Camilla's timeline. Would their eventual public acceptance have been quicker because Diana's living presence forced a clearer resolution? Or slower because the emotional closure the public attached to her death never arrives? No one can prove it, but either way, the crown's narrative would have been less unified, more contested, and far more personal. In short, her survival might not have toppled the throne, but it could have reshaped the monarchy's identity, pushing it toward openness sooner, or deepening internal fractures longer.